She waited hours on a blind date. The ruthless Don locked the doors. Then he said, "You're mine now." Nadia had already checked her watch 3 times before the appetizers even hit the neighboring tables. 7 minutes past 7. She had arrived at 6:53, because she always did, because being early was not a habit for her. It was a religion, the kind built in childhood by a mother who said that a woman who cannot manage her own time will never manage anything else. So Nadia had arrived at 6:53, in a navy dress she had ironed that morning, her hair pulled into a low bun that had taken her 40 minutes to make look effortless, and she had asked for the table near the window, away from the kitchen noise, because she had called ahead to confirm the reservation, and she had thought, while she was at it, she might as well choose the best seat. That was before she understood she would be sitting in it alone. The restaurant was called Ember. It was the kind of place that did not need to advertise, the kind where the menus had no prices on them, and the lighting was designed to make everyone look like they had slept well and eaten better. She had never been here before. The man who had arranged tonight, a colleague of her sister's named Colin, had chosen it, and she had said yes because her sister had spent 2 weeks making the case for Colin, with the energy of a woman who had personally invested in his future. And Nadia, who was tired in a way she could not quite name, had said, "Fine, fine, I will go." She ordered still water, then changed it to sparkling, because sparkling felt like a choice she was making for herself, and not for anyone else. The bread basket arrived at 7:11. She did not touch it. 7:19. Still nothing. She opened her phone. 2 texts sent. Both delivered, neither read. She typed a third, something simple, something that gave him every possible exit from whatever had delayed him. A traffic question, an "Are you close?" The sort of message that made her look unbothered, even though the act of composing it carefully was itself evidence of how bothered she was. He did not read that one either. By 7:35, the waiter had come by twice. The first time she had ordered another sparkling water. The second time she had smiled and said she was still deciding, which was not true. She had decided on the sea bass before she left the house. She always decided before she arrived. That was the other thing her mother had given her, the habit of preparation, of walking into rooms already knowing what she wanted so that no one could catch her uncertain and mistake it for weakness. She was very certain right now that she wanted to leave. But she did not leave. Not at 7:35. Not at 7:47, when the couple at the next table received their main courses, and the woman laughed at something her partner said, a bright, easy laugh that Nadia felt in her back teeth. Not at 7:59, when she finally put her phone face down on the table because looking at it had become a small act of punishment she no longer wanted to perform on herself. She looked at the bread basket instead. Round, cloth-covered, sitting in the center of the table like something waiting to be acknowledged. The cloth was white linen. There were 4 rolls inside, she could tell by the shape. She had not touched them because she had been saving the gesture, treating the bread the way you treat the opening of a gift, something to do once the other person arrived, something to do together. No one was coming. She knew that now. Knew it the way you know a thing you have been refusing to know for 45 minutes. The way the truth arranges itself in your chest, long before your brain agrees to admit it. 8 o'clock. She sat back in her chair. The restaurant was full now, every table occupied, the low hum of conversation filling the space the way water fills a jar, slowly, completely, until there is no room for silence. She was the only person sitting alone. She was also the only person who had arranged her silverware twice. She was a pharmacist. She counted things. It was not a quirk. It was professional conditioning, the kind that follows you home, that makes you reorganize the spice rack by frequency of use, that makes you notice when the silverware on a restaurant table has been set with the knife angled 2 degrees further than standard. She had straightened it when she sat down. She had straightened it again at 7:40 when she needed something to do with her hands. She was not going to straighten it a third time. The maitre d', a tall man with the manner of someone who had witnessed every variation of human discomfort and felt equally composed about all of them, had begun giving her a look. Not an unkind look, a careful look. The look you give someone when you are weighing whether to offer help, or whether the offer of help would make everything worse. She recognized it. She had given it herself, standing behind a pharmacy counter, to patients who came in holding prescriptions they clearly did not want to need. She hated being on this side of it. At 8:04, she reached for her coat. It was still on her shoulders. She had never fully taken it off, she realized. Not because she was cold, but because taking it off would have meant committing to being there. And some part of her had been keeping one foot pointed toward the door all evening, just in case. She gathered her bag from the back of the chair. She set it on her lap. She thought about the sea bass she had never ordered, the conversation she had rehearsed in the car on the way here, the version of tonight she had constructed in her head while ironing her dress, a version that bore no relationship to this one. She thought, Lord, not today. And then the front door of Ember opened. The room did not change in any visible way. The conversation did not stop. The lighting did not shift. And yet something in the air of the restaurant recalibrated, the way a room full of people all turns at the same moment, toward a sound none of them could later say they heard. It was a presence, dense and quiet, entering a space that responded to it the way water responds to something dropped in, not with noise but with adjustment. Nadia was not looking at the door. She was looking at her bag, at the clasp she was working open to retrieve her card, at the practical task of paying for sparkling water she had barely drunk, and bread she had not touched. She was not going to look at the door. She was leaving. She was already, in every way that mattered, gone. She looked at the door. The man standing inside it was talking to the maitre d', in a low voice, unhurried, the way people speak when they are accustomed to being heard without raising their volume. He was not especially tall. He was not dressed in a way that announced anything. Dark suit, open collar, the kind of clothes that cost enough to look like they required no thought. He had the stillness of someone who had never needed to fill a silence to survive it. She could not have said what it was. The stillness, maybe, or the way the maitre d', a man who had given Nadia the calm, practiced look of someone who pitied her, was now standing 2 inches straighter. The man's eyes moved across the restaurant the way a hand moves across a surface in the dark, searching, deliberate, until they found the table by the window. Her table. He looked at it. At her. At the untouched bread basket and the 2 glasses of sparkling water, and the coat still around her shoulders. He looked at her the way people look at things they are deciding what to do about. Then he crossed the room and sat down across from her. Nadia did not say anything for a moment. She was recalculating. She was running a very fast internal assessment that her training had not prepared her for. The kind you run when something happens that has no category yet. "You are in my seat," he said. His voice was even. No edge in it, no warmth either. Just fact delivered at a volume appropriate for a conversation between 2 people who were less than 3 feet apart. She looked at him. "I have a reservation," she said. "So do I." A pause the length of a breath. "Then there has been a mistake," she said, and her hand was already moving to her bag, the clasp already open, because she had been leaving before he arrived, and she was certainly leaving now. She was a woman who did not sit in uncomfortable situations longer than required. She had spent a great deal of her adult life making sure she never had to. "There has," he said. He did not move, did not lean back, did not look away from her. "You are welcome to stay while it gets sorted." She looked at him the way she looked at drug representatives who came in with samples she had not requested, and explanations she had not asked for. "I was just leaving," she said. "I know," he said. 2 words. Plain. Not kind exactly. Not unkind. Just accurate. The way the best diagnoses are. Not comfortable, but correct. She stayed. She did not, in that moment, examine why. She told herself it was because the waiter had appeared at the edge of her vision, and she did not want to create a scene during the paying of the bill. She told herself it was because the maitre d' was already walking toward the table with an expression of controlled apology, and it made sense to wait until that had resolved itself. She told herself several things in quick succession, all of them reasonable, none of them the real answer. She ordered the sea bass. He ordered nothing, and the waiter did not question this, which told Nadia something about Dante Moreau before she even knew his name. She found out his name 3 minutes later when the maitre d' apologized to him by it, softly, with a weight in the word that suggested the name carried history in this room, in this building, possibly in this street. The Dante. She filed it the way she filed everything, quickly, in the right place, with a small mental tab marking it for later reference. His eyes came back to hers. "Nadia," she said, before he could ask. He did not look surprised that she offered it. He did not look surprised by anything. He said it once, trying it the way you try a word in a language you recognize but do not speak, and she felt it happen, something small and structural, in the center of her chest, the way a hair-thin crack appears in glass before anyone notices. She checked her watch. 8:11. She put her hand back in her lap. The sea bass arrived, and the evening rearranged itself around that fact, and Nadia, who had come here for someone who had not come, sat across from a man she did not know and felt, for the first time since 6:53, that she was not counting down to something. She was in the middle of it. That distinction, small as it sounds, was the one that changed everything. Colin had not sent a single message by 9 o'clock. Nadia knew this because she had checked her phone in the bathroom at 8:40, standing at the marble sink with the tap running so it looked like she had a reason to be there, and the screen had shown her nothing. 3 messages sent into a void that had apparently swallowed them whole. She put the phone back in her bag. She looked at herself in the mirror for a moment, at the low bun and the navy dress, and the expression she was wearing, which was the one she wore at work when a situation had not gone according to protocol and she was deciding, without any visible indication of the decision being made, what to do next. She went back to the table. Dante was exactly where she had left him, which should not have surprised her, but did, slightly, in the way that things surprise you when you have spent the evening braced for people not to be where you left them. He had, while she was gone, acquired a glass of water. He was not drinking it. He was reading something on his phone with the focused stillness of a man who had learned to be productive in all available pockets of time. He put the phone away when she sat down. She noticed that. The putting away, not a performance of attention, just the actual thing, quiet and immediate. "You could have left while I was gone," she said. Because she was a person who named the available options, it was professional conditioning, transparency in all directions. "I could have," he said. "But you did not." "No." She looked at him for a moment. "Why?" she said. He considered this, not in the way people consider questions when they do not know the answer, but in the way people consider questions when they know the answer and are deciding how precisely to give it. "The breadbasket," he said. She blinked. "You spent an hour not touching it," he said. "I wanted to see if you would." It was possibly the strangest reason anyone had ever given for staying at a table. It was also, she had to admit, precisely the kind of observation that should not have been possible to make, unless someone had been watching her with a quality of attention she was not accustomed to receiving. She looked at the breadbasket. 2 rolls left. She had eaten 2 during the sea bass, finally, because hunger had defeated ceremony, and she had run out of reasons to treat bread as symbolic. "And did I?" she said. "Touch it." "Eventually," he said. Something almost moved in his expression, something that had the shape of humor without quite becoming it. She picked up her water glass, set it back down. "What do you do?" she said, because she was a person who asked direct questions, because direct questions were the fastest route to information, and because she had been in this man's presence for over an hour and knew almost nothing about him except his name and the fact that the maitre d' had said it the way people say the names of things they are slightly afraid of. "Import and logistics," he said. Simple, clean, the kind of answer that was true, and also contained a great deal of space around the edges, where other things could live without being mentioned. She nodded once. "You own this building," she said. "And the restaurant. And presumably the table." "The table? Yes." She looked at him. "That is a significant amount of ownership for a logistics businessman." "I am very good at logistics," he said. She almost smiled. She caught it, folded it back, because she had not decided yet what she was doing here, and smiling felt like a vote she was not ready to cast. She told him she was a pharmacist. She did not know exactly why she volunteered it. Maybe because the evening had taken on the quality of something that needed to be mutual, an exchange, a thing given for a thing given, and he had just told her something. He said, "That explains the silverware." She felt her face go carefully neutral. "I straightened it twice," she said. Not a question. 3 times, he said. The third was when you came back from the bathroom. You adjusted the knife. She had. She had not been aware she was doing it. It was the kind of thing that happened below the level of conscious decision, the trained reflex of a person who spent her working life making sure every item was exactly where it was supposed to be, because in her line of work an item in the wrong place could matter in ways that did not bear thinking about. That is a very unsettling thing to notice, she said. Yes, he agreed, pleasantly, the way you agree with a weather forecast. She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. Neither of them seemed to feel the need to fill the space. That was unusual. In her experience, silences made people reach for words the way a person reaching for something in the dark reaches for a light switch, automatically, before they have even decided they need to see. Dante Moreau did not reach for anything. He sat in the silence like a man who had furnished it himself and found it comfortable. You knew, she said. Didn't you? Not a question this time. He looked at her. Knew what? He said. But it was not the knowing kind of not knowing. It was the kind that gave her space to say the thing she was working toward. Why I was sitting alone, she said. You knew before you sat down. A pause. Small, precise. I noticed the coat, he said, and the 2 glasses of water, and the way you were holding your bag. People hold bags, she said. People who are about to leave hold bags differently than people who are waiting, he said. You were holding it like a decision you had already made. She stared at him. You were leaving, he said, but you had not left yet, which meant some part of you was not finished. She did not know what to say to that. She was a person who always knew what to say. She had opinions arranged in order of likelihood of being needed. She had responses prepared for most social situations. She had, in professional environments, been told she was the calmest person in any room. She was not calm. She was something else entirely, something she did not have a label for, which was itself the most unsettling part. I had finished the sea bass, she said finally. I was staying for the bill. Of course, he said. He did not believe this. She did not believe it either. But they both let it stand, and the evening moved around it, and somewhere between 9:15 and 9:40, she stopped being aware of the time passing, and started being aware only of what was being said, and what was not being said, and the particular texture of a conversation with someone who listened to the whole sentence, before deciding what they thought about it. She told him about the pharmacy, not the mechanics of it, but the part she actually loved, the part where someone came in frightened and left less frightened, because she had taken the time to explain something clearly, to take a complicated thing and make it simple, without making the person feel simple, for not having understood it before. He listened. He did not say, "That must be rewarding," which was what people usually said, the verbal equivalent of a nodding smile, a response that confirmed they had heard, without confirming they had understood. He said, "You like being the person who has the information." She opened her mouth to correct him and then closed it again, because it was not incorrect. It was just said plainly, without the softening layer people usually applied to accurate observations about other people, and the plainness of it caught her off guard. Not for power, she said, because it helps. Those are not mutually exclusive, he said. She thought about that. She thought he was right. She did not say so immediately. He talked about his own work in small portions, the way you talk about something you know very well, and have learned not to explain to people who will not understand it, and do not need to. He talked about logistics the way she talked about inventory management, as a system, a set of moving parts that had to be maintained, and monitored, and occasionally forced back into alignment when they drifted. She understood that language. Systems, alignment, maintenance. She found herself asking a question, and then another, not because she was performing interest, but because the interest was actual, and when it was actual she never bothered pretending it was not. He answered her questions. All of them. With that same quality of precision, the economy of someone who chose words the way she chose medications, for accuracy, for effect, for the minimum required to do the job correctly. At 10:22, she said, "You noticed my hands." He looked up from the water glass he had been turning slowly. "Earlier," she said. When you sat down, you looked at my hands. You were arranging the silverware, he said. You knew I was a pharmacist before I told you. A pause. Your hands are careful, he said, in a specific way. The way people are careful when they have learned that carelessness has consequences. She looked at her hands. Long fingers, short nails, a faint callus on the pad of her right index finger, from the ring binder she kept at the dispensing counter. Her mother had called them capable hands. Her sister had called them not a pianist's hands, with the tone of someone who thought this required consolation. She had never thought of them as a thing that could be read. That is still unsettling, she said. I know, he said. There it was again. That word, that shape, said flat and certain. Not I am sorry, not I understand, just I know, like an acknowledgement that the world was a certain way, and he had no interest in pretending otherwise. She looked at the bread basket, empty now. She had eaten the last roll at 10:05 without thinking. She thought about that. I came here tonight, she said, because some things needed to be said plainly, even when the saying of them cost something. Because my sister has very strong opinions about my life choices, and I had run out of good arguments. He looked at her. And the man who was supposed to be here, she said, did not come. No, Dante said. He did not. She nodded. Right. She turned her water glass. And you sat down anyway. Yes. Why? He looked at her for a long, still moment. The restaurant was thinning now, tables clearing, the hum of conversation dropping in volume and frequency. Because the seat was mine, he said, and I did not want to ask you to move. She thought about this. She decided it was true. She also decided it was not the whole truth, and that the rest of it was sitting in the air between them, in that careful way he had of placing things, in the open, where she could reach for them if she chose to, without being handed anything she had not agreed to hold. It is a good table, she said. It is, he said. She did not check her watch. At 11:15, she realized she had not checked it since 8:40, in the bathroom, and that the realization itself, the noticing of a gap in a habit that had not stopped running since 6:53, felt like the edge of something. She did not follow the feeling to its conclusion. Not yet. The restaurant was quieting, chairs turning in from empty tables, the kitchen sounds reducing to a lower register, the particular silence of a place that has finished the main work of the evening and begun the tidying. She had been in Ember for nearly 4.5 hours, which was 4 hours longer than she had expected to survive it. And she was still here, and the sea bass had been very good. And across the table from her was a man whose last name she did not yet know, which was unusual, because she had known Colin's last name, his job title, his university, his dietary preferences, and the name of his childhood dog within 6 minutes of her sister forwarding his profile. She knew almost nothing about Dante except the shape of how he occupied a room, and yet, she straightened the empty breadbasket cloth without thinking. He noticed. Of course he noticed. She did not apologize for it. At 11:30, Nadia noticed the first of the staff putting on their coats. This was a normal thing. Restaurants closed. Staff went home. She had not registered how late it had gotten, which was itself an event she would have to examine later in the ordered privacy of her own flat. But for now, she simply noted it, the way she noted most things, and adjusted. She reached for her bag. And then the thing happened that she could not file neatly anywhere. Dante said something to the waiter, not loudly, not urgently, just a quiet exchange that lasted perhaps 8 seconds, and the waiter nodded, and the waiter left. And then Dante said the same kind of quiet, unremarkable thing to the 2 remaining members of floor staff, and they also left, with the same nod, the same absence of question or hesitation, the same quality of people who had been given an instruction they had been given before. The kitchen sounds stopped. The restaurant, which had been thinning for an hour, was now empty. Nadia looked around. Then she heard it, a sound she recognized without being able to immediately place, a mechanical, decisive sound from the direction of the front entrance, the turn of a lock. The kind of sound that meant something different on one side of a door than on the other. She turned back to Dante. He had not moved. He was sitting exactly as he had been sitting for the past 3 hours, with the stillness that she had by now identified not as calm, exactly, but as control, the kind of stillness that required effort precisely because it looked effortless. She looked at him for a moment. She looked at the locked door. She looked at him again. "You did not," she said. Her voice was doing the thing it did behind the dispensing counter, when a situation had veered outside acceptable parameters and she was, very quietly, refusing to accept that. "I own the building," he said, "and the restaurant." A pause, measured and deliberate. "And at present, the next hour of your evening." She felt something move through her that was not fear, not exactly, but was something in the same postal district as fear, something that had fear's address, and sat very quietly in the chair next to it. She was a woman who had been raised with a precise understanding of what it meant to be a woman in a room with a door that had been locked by someone other than herself. She had that understanding bone deep, woven into the same fabric as check your surroundings and trust the discomfort, and do not explain away the thing that does not feel right. She ran the assessment. She was at a table across from a man who had not moved, who had made no gesture toward her, who had not raised his voice or changed his expression, or done anything that she could classify as threat, except for the fact of the locked door and the empty restaurant and the simple statement of ownership delivered without apology. She was not afraid. She was something else. Something she sat with for a moment, testing it, the way she tested unfamiliar compounds, carefully, without committing to a conclusion before the evidence was complete. "That," she said, and her voice was very even, "is an enormous overstep." "It is," he said. No deflection, no explanation layered over it. Just agreement, plain and immediate. The same quality of honesty that had caught her off guard at 8:11 and kept catching her off guard at intervals she could not predict. She looked at him. "Then why?" she said. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Because I want to tell you something, and I did not want you to leave before I said it." She set her bag on the table between them. Deliberately, it was a line of sorts, a small visible thing she placed there to mark a boundary and to give herself something to look at that was not his face. "Say it then," she said. He said, "The man who was supposed to be here tonight, Colin." She went very still. She had not said his name. She was quite certain she had not said his name. She had referred to him only as the man who was supposed to be here, and she had only done so twice. "How do you know his name?" she said. Not a question. A statement with a question mark she was not ready to add yet. "Because I know him," Dante said. "Not well. Peripherally. In the way that people in certain circles know people in other circles, where there is overlap, but not friendship." She stared at him. He continued, with the same evenness he brought to everything. He was not going to come tonight. He was aware, by 6 o'clock this evening, that he would not be coming. He did not contact you because he lacked the nerve for it, and because he calculated, incorrectly, that silence was easier than explanation. The restaurant was very quiet. Nadia counted, without meaning to, 4 things in her immediate sightline: the bread basket, her bag, her water glass, the candle at the center of the table, still lit, which meant the staff who had left it burning intentionally, which meant they had expected someone to still need light. "You knew this," she said, "when you sat down." "Yes." "Before you sat down." "Yes." She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth. This was not a distress response. This was a calibration response. The breath you take when you are resetting your instruments. "Why did he not come?" she said. And then, before he could answer, she said, "No, first, why did you know?" He looked at her. The candlelight did something to the planes of his face, made them more angular, more considered, though she suspected that was a trick of the light and not a trick of his, because the planes of his face looked equally deliberate in every other light she had seen them in tonight. "Because the situation that prevented him from coming is connected, at a distance, to things that are connected to me," he said. "I did not arrange it, but I was aware of it." She held that sentence and examined it. It was a careful sentence. A sentence that did not lie, but that also did not volunteer everything it knew. She was, professionally, an expert in sentences like that, in the difference between what a person said and what a person omitted, because her job required her to identify both and work with both. Connected to things that are connected to you, she said. Yes. That is a very tidy way of saying something that is probably not tidy. Yes, he said. A pause. It is not tidy. She looked at the locked door. It sat across the room from her, doing its job. The light was on above it. The lock was a simple commercial one, the kind she could work open herself if she chose to. And she registered this, not because she planned to use the information, but because she was a person who always noted the exits. She had noted it. She was still at the table. "Why did you tell me?" she said. "You could have said nothing. I would have had dinner and left and assumed Colin was a coward, which, by your account, he more or less is." "Yes," Dante said. "So why?" He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that was not hesitation. "Because you spent an hour waiting," he said. "And you did it well, better than most people manage. And I thought you deserved to know that the waiting was not about you." She looked at him. She had not, she realized, considered until this moment the possibility that someone might tell her that. She had, during the hour between 7 and 8, run through approximately every available reason for Colin's absence. In the efficient and somewhat punishing way she ran through every available variable when a situation was outside her control. She had considered traffic, emergency, change of heart, simple rudeness. She had not considered that the absence might have nothing to do with her at all, might be something that existed entirely in a world parallel to her, and had merely brushed against her evening by accident. She had not considered it because, in her experience, when someone did not come, the reason was always, at some angle, about you. "Not about me," she said. "No," he said. The candle flickered. She watched it settle. "And the rest of it," she said. "The things that are connected to things that are connected to you. The reason he was not going to come. Are you going to tell me that?" He met her eyes. "Not tonight," he said. "Not because I am hiding it. Because it is complicated, and some of it is not mine to explain, and the parts that are mine will take longer than we have right now to say correctly." She considered this. She tested it the way she tested everything, for consistency, for gaps, for the place where the logic did not hold. It held. She did not like it, but it held. "You locked the door," she said again, because it still needed to be said, because she was not a woman who allowed things to simply dissolve into the larger conversation without being addressed. "I did," he said. "And you said I was yours." Her voice was steady, precise. "Those were your exact words." He did not look away. "Yes," he said. She looked at him, really looked at him, the way she had not fully permitted herself to look all evening, taking inventory, which was what she did, what she had always done, taking the complete picture in, and deciding what she was going to do with it. Dark eyes, still hands, a quality of attention that she had not encountered before in a man who had not been paid to give it to her. "You cannot say something like that," she said, "and expect it to simply sit there without a response." "I know," he said. "Then what do you expect?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I expect you to decide," he said. "That is all. I have said a thing that is true. What you do with it is entirely yours." She looked at the locked door. She looked at the candle. She looked at her bag, still sitting on the table between them, the line she had drawn. "My name," she said slowly, "is Nadia Osei. I am 28 years old. I arrived at this restaurant at 6:53 this evening, for a date that did not happen. I have eaten sea bass and 2 bread rolls and a quantity of sparkling water that I will probably think about tomorrow morning. I have spent 3 hours talking to a man I did not know 3 hours ago, in a restaurant that man owns, in a building that man owns, and the door is locked." She paused. "And I am not afraid," she said. She said it like a finding, like a result at the end of a long calculation that she had not been sure was going to come out cleanly. He looked at her. "I know," he said, quiet, precise. She picked up her water glass, finished what was in it, set it back on the table with a small, clean sound. "Tell me your last name," she said. He told her. She filed it in the right place. Outside, through the restaurant windows, the street was still going about its business. People walking past with no knowledge of the locked door, or the candle, or the conversation happening in the room behind the glass. The world was very large and very indifferent and doing everything it usually did. Inside Ember, Nadia Osei sat with a man named Dante Moreau and felt, for the first time in a very long time, that she was not waiting for something to begin. She was already in it. The door was unlocked at midnight. Nadia heard it the same way she had heard it lock, a sound she would not have noticed in any other context, small and mechanical, but she was paying close attention to everything in this room, because she was a person who paid close attention to everything when she could not classify a situation, and she could not classify this one. Dante stood, walked to the front of the restaurant with the unhurried movement of a man performing a routine, turned the lock, and walked back to the table and sat down. He did not make a statement of it, did not look at her for a reaction, did not present the open door the way a magician presents a trick. He simply unlocked it and came back and refilled the glass on her side of the table from the water jug that had been left. She looked at the door. Open. The night visible through the glass, the street still lit, the world still ongoing beyond it. She looked back at him. "The car will take you wherever you need to go," he said. "Whenever you are ready." She sat with that for a moment, sat with the fact that there was a car, that he had presumed she would need a way home, that this had apparently been arranged without her input at a time she could not identify. She sat with the fact that the door was open and she was not moving toward it. She picked up the water glass, drank, set it down. "I need to know one thing," she said. He waited. That was another thing about him. When she said she needed something, he waited for her to get to it. He did not pre-fill the silence with guesses. It was possible, she thought, that he already knew the question. She thought it was equally possible that he had no idea, and was simply comfortable enough with not knowing that it looked the same. "The man tonight," she said. "Colin, were you the reason he did not come?" The question sat on the table between them like the breadbasket had, round and waiting. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Yes." One word. She had expected more. She had expected the architecture of explanation, the sentence built around a single fact to make the fact softer, or more complex, or easier to live with. She had learned to expect that, from people who had done a thing, and wished to be forgiven for it, while still remaining in possession of the doing. He did not do that. He said yes, and he said it with the same evenness he had used for everything else all evening, the flatness of a person who had made a decision, and was neither proud of it nor ashamed, who had simply made it, and was now presenting it to her the way you present a document. "Here, this is what it is. Read it however you need to." She breathed in, breathed out. "Why?" she said. He considered the question with the care he gave all her questions. "Because the situation I described earlier," he said. "The things that are connected to things connected to me." Colin was not innocent of those things. He made choices, some time ago, that had consequences, and some of those consequences arrived for him last week, and among them was the ending of certain arrangements he had made. One of those arrangements was tonight. She looked at him. She was doing the translation in real time, taking the careful, constructed sentences, and finding the shape of the thing underneath them. "He owed you something," she said. "He owed a situation something," Dante said. "I am part of the situation." She nodded once. Slow. "And me," she said. "Was I part of the situation?" "No," he said, immediately, and with a directness that was different from his other directness, a quicker thing, like a door being shut. "You were not. You were entirely separate. You were simply in the place his failure to honor a commitment left empty." She thought about that. She thought about the table by the window and the confirmed reservation, and the bread basket, and the 7 minutes she had arrived early for a man who had, apparently, known by 6 o'clock that he would not be coming. She thought about the hour she had waited, and the 14 dates before this one, and the coat she had never taken off her shoulders. She thought about Dante Moreau, who had walked into his own restaurant and found a woman sitting at his table with an untouched bread basket, and had sat down across from her, and had said I know, with the tone of someone who actually did. You arranged to have him not come, she said. The situation arranged that, Dante said. I did not arrange you. But you knew I would be here. A pause. I knew someone was here, he said. I did not know who until I walked in. She believed this. She ran the logic of it, and it came out clean. And when you saw me, she said, what did you think? He looked at her, the kind of looking she had been aware of all evening, complete and undeflected, the kind that should have been uncomfortable and was not. I thought, he said, that Colin had made a very significant error. Something moved in her chest, small and structural, that same hairline thing she had felt at 8:11, except it was a little wider now and a little harder to ignore. She looked at the open door. 7 steps, maybe 8. She had measured it earlier, with her eyes, the way she measured everything. She could be through it in under 10 seconds. The car he had mentioned was presumably somewhere beyond it, and the car would take her to her flat, and she would make tea and sit with her own thoughts and sort through the evening by category the way she sorted through everything, and by morning she would have it in order. She looked at the open door for a long time. She did not stand up. She said, I need to tell you something. He waited. I have been on 14 blind dates in 2 years, she said. This is the 15th. My sister has opinions about my life and an extensive network of colleagues with eligible brothers, and I have, each time, agreed to go, because I am not a person who refuses to try things simply because previous attempts have not produced the expected result. She paused. I am, however, a person who eventually updates her methods when data consistently fails to support the hypothesis. He was very still. The hypothesis, she said, was that one of these evenings would go the way it was supposed to go, and I would feel the way I was supposed to feel, and the whole project would resolve cleanly, like a good dispensing. Right drug, right dose, right patient, everything where it belongs. She looked at him. This evening did not go the way it was supposed to go, she said. Everything about it was wrong. The person was wrong. The timing was wrong. The door was locked. You told me I was yours, which is not something a person says to a woman they have known for 3 hours. And yet here I am, at midnight, with an open door behind me, and I am talking to you, instead of walking through it. The candle between them had burned low. It was still lit. I am not telling you this because I have made a decision, she said. I am telling you because I am a person who names things accurately, and the accurate name for what is happening right now is that something has happened, and I am aware of it, and I think you should be too. He looked at her. I am, he said. She reached into her bag. She took out a pen. She looked around for something to write on, and there was the paper edge of the receipt the waiter had left at some point in the last hour, and she picked it up and she wrote her number on it, small and neat, pharmacist precise, every digit correctly formed. She put the pen back. She set the receipt on the table between them and took her hand away. She stood up. She put her bag on her shoulder. She settled her coat, which was still on her shoulders because she had never fully taken it off, because some part of her had been keeping one foot pointed toward the door all evening, just in case. She looked at Dante Moreau. He was looking at the receipt. Then he looked at her. I did not ask for that, he said. No, she said, you did not. She walked to the door. 7 steps. She had been right. She pushed it open, and the night came in, cool and clean and indifferent, the street going about its business the way it had been all evening. She stepped through. She did not look back. She was not a person who looked back at exits. You moved through them or you did not, and she had moved through this one, and that was a decision, and she was aware of what it was. The car was there, a dark car, engine quiet, driver who did not ask where she was going but listened when she said, and moved into traffic without comment. She sat in the back seat. She did not take her phone out. She did not look at the 3 unread messages that had finally delivered to Colin's phone at some point in the evening. She did not go over the conversation, or the locked door, or the word yours, or the open door she had walked through at midnight with a number left on a table. She looked out the window at the city. Nadia Osei was 28 years old. She had arrived at a restaurant at 6:53, for a date that did not happen. She had spent 4 hours and 7 minutes inside it. She had eaten sea bass and an entire bread basket, and a quantity of sparkling water she would not think about. She had talked to a man she did not know, and learned the shape of him in the way you learn things you have not studied, by proximity, by exposure, by paying attention when you had not planned to. She had left him her number. She had not been asked. She had walked through an open door. She looked at her hands in her lap. Careful hands, he had said. Hands that had learned carelessness had consequences. She was not careless. She was not afraid. She was not finished. She watched the city move past the window and did not, for the entire ride home, check her watch. Not once. She was not counting the minutes. She did not need to know the time. She already knew what had happened to her in that restaurant. Not when the door locked. Not when he said, "You're mine." Not when he unlocked the door and she chose to stay. It was the watch. It was always the watch. She had spent 28 years counting time like it was something that might run out before she got to the important part. And in Ember, over sea bass and an empty bread basket and a conversation she had not planned to have, she had simply stopped. For the first time in a very long time, she had been nowhere but where she was. The car pulled up to her building. She thanked the driver. She got out. She stood on the pavement for a moment and looked up at the ordinary night sky and felt the cool air and thought, well, that was the whole thought. Just, well, it was enough. She went inside. Her phone buzzed at 12:41. One message, unknown number, 2 words. She stood in her kitchen with the kettle beginning to hiss and read them twice. She did not reply immediately. She made the tea first, because she was a person who finished what she was doing before starting the next thing, because that was the architecture of her, built carefully and not easily moved. Then she sat down at her kitchen table with the tea and read the 2 words again. Then she picked up her phone. Then she wrote back. What happened in that restaurant had no single name. It was not love, not yet. It was not trust, not entirely. It was the beginning of a decision she had not been asked to make, and had made anyway. The way you make the decisions that matter, not because the conditions are right, not because the timing is clean, not because the risk has been fully assessed and found acceptable, but because something in you has already moved, and the rest of you is simply catching up. Nadia Osei had spent 28 years building the most careful life she could manage. She had counted things and confirmed things, and arrived 7 minutes early for everything, so that nothing could catch her unprepared. Dante Moreau had locked a door, and then he had unlocked it, and she had walked through it on her own 2 feet, and she had left something on the table that he had not asked for. That, she decided, as she finished her tea in the quiet of her kitchen, was the truest thing that had happened all evening. Not the locked door. The number she had left by choice. Her choice. On her terms. Walking through an open door at midnight with her coat still on her shoulders and her hands very steady. That was the whole of it. That was the beginning.